Welcome back, Shelly Palmer. It's been a while. We're just wrapping up New Fronts Week in New York City now, and there was a lot of talk about disruptive tech, especially AI, empowering all kinds of new things. And I'll get into some of that. But first, I'd like to switch it back to you and see what's been on your mind in the last few weeks. We receive your daily posts, and I'd like to drill down some of those. But what's the big meta theme that has struck you since we last spoke? It's been about 3 or 4 weeks now.
Well, I think the leadership change at Paramount is either a canary in the coal mine or an anomaly. I don't know which, but my suspicion is that it is the canary in the coal mine, and that we are now entering the beginning of the main transition. You got the NBA looking, kicking the tires in a different direction. Warner Brothers Discovery let their exclusive negotiating period lapse. Now it's just going to be a kind of a free for all. Will it end up in broadcast? Will it end up, at least some of it, in big tech? It just feels to me like the transition has begun, and I can't help but reminisce about what was, and of course be excited about what's about to be. It's a different world, and this is just, we're smack in the middle of conference season, so it's just a possible conference with everybody, and literally a dozen other conferences over the last 6-8 weeks, and the talk everywhere is of all new, all the time. Everybody is I'm not going to say confused, because that's not right. I think everybody is ready to forge new paths, and it's very clear that that's what's happening.
I agree with you. I mean, I've been covering this industrial revolution for 40 years now, and I think we're at an inflection point for the quote trad media companies. My big story of the week is a small one by your standards, but it says something about the network television business and the studios and the agencies, which was Omnicom unveiled a pilot with Google to automate and optimize their television upfront buying process, which means it's fully integrating with Google as their optimizer on the, coming out of a digital supply chain mentality. To me, that's game over time once that's sort of technology gets baked in, because there's nothing to differentiate or distinguish linear media from digital at that point. It's all being optimized within Google systems. What do you think?
You're spot on in your assessment. There are audiences, there are prejudices in the traditional television business, which are deep seated. They go back as far as the advent of cable television. If you remember, a traditional television dial in New York City, channels 2, 4, and 7, I was worth more than I was on channels 5, 9, and 11.
Sure.
And on any of those, I was worth more than I was on cable, on channel 123. No matter what it was, that was worth less. I could spend all my time there, but I, as an audience member, every time I pressed the button, I had a different value, and it was still me. And so it was never clear to anyone who understands data why an individual was worth less on a different channel than they were, this the same person in the same living room doing the same thing. So if you get them, you get them. It's the right person, right time, right place. If the right place is the living room, and then what's the right message? Why were those priced differently? And the answers are complex, but at the end of the day, it had more to do with cable being a disadvantaged medium, and unwired networks, and what was the pure distribution system, and like all of those anomalistic prejudices seem to pervade the industry all the way through. And all of a sudden, audiences are being respected as audiences, and individuals, the buzzword is hyper personalization, which I'm not a giant fan of, but just saying it out loud makes me sad. But the idea that you have an audience of one, and you just need to get to that audience at the right time, when they're in the right frame of mind, and hopefully that's the right place. That to me is so far overdue that my own bias for never having understood why. I mean, I understand, I shouldn't say never understanding why. I understood precisely why the things were priced differently, and I understood the arguments. But from a pure data perspective, Joe Mandisi is Joe Mandisi, Shelly Palmer, Shelly Palmer. If you get me, you get me. And if I'm in the mood to buy, and you get me at the time I'm in the mood to buy, and I have money, and I have means, and I have motive, then it really doesn't matter what channel I'm on, as long as you put your message there when I'm ready to make the purchase or ready to be incentivized to make a purchase. So we're coming really close to that now. We are, I mean, we are dangerously close to your media finding you, not you finding your media. And I mean, once that transition is complete, the idea of whether something is traditional or untraditional, or, you know, smoke signals or carrier pigeons, it won't make a difference, right? It's going to be data driven message delivery, and we're so close to that across the board. Obviously, it exists in many pockets, but
Well, we're segueing from this new front week into quote upfront week, and the networks will talk a lot about being platforms and leveraging tech and all that good stuff. And then you're going to jump right into Cannes and the Lions. What do you think the big theme is going to be this year? Is it going to be AI again, like it was last year?
of course, like you can. Yeah, I think I told you when I got to CES in January, you could literally smell the paint drying on the letters AI that had been freshly painted on every exhibit across all 4,200 exhibits at CES. And every conference I've been to this year, everybody's talking AI. And interestingly, TK at the Google conference a couple of weeks ago just called everything generative AI. Didn't make any delineations between neural networks or diffusion networks or any. It didn't matter what kind of network it was, what kind of AI system it was. He just threw it all into generative AI. And I think what became obvious in the dinners I attended and the people I talked to and hanging out with some of the engineers that are working day and night on the most current models. Big tech, as we understand it, OpenAI, Google, Amazon, Meta, the science groups that are working really hard on making these models real, they're not thinking about you and me and the interim steps we're taking, how we're going to increase productivity or how we're going to talk to data or how we're going to build some new product. They're working on what they are calling AGI, artificial general intelligence. And it's a loosely defined term. I don't think it has a universally accepted definition, but you could think of it for this conversation as building an AI model that could learn as quickly as a human across disciplines and perform roughly at a human level or above. And that definition is being redefined every day, and everyone you ask is going to give you a slightly different version of it. But the idea that you could make a machine be able to apply its knowledge broadly, learn very quickly from being taught very quickly, learn by itself, sort of reason its way through a problem. Everybody has, like I said, a slightly different definition, but that's what they're working on. They're not working on how to Joe and Shelly optimize our media mix modeling using AI. There are people who are working on that, but not the big foundational model peeps. They are working on tools that will reason. And because of that, everybody who's building a specialized tool on somebody's foundational model at any moment could be disrupted. Any moment, sort of like a more terrible, quicker version with less notice than when you were building something really cool for an iPhone, and then Tim Cook goes, too many people are using that. Let's incorporate it into iOS. And then like 1 minute later, you were out of business. Like this is going to be worse, faster, and more furious because they're not paying attention. Clearly, they're not paying attention to anything that's being built on these models. And it's making this a really tough thing. So yeah, that's going to be the focus in Cannes. It's going to be everybody telling you all the AI stuff they have. And anybody sober is going to look at this and say, well, did you build your own model? Probably not. Whose model did you build it on? What are you relying on from the large language model perspective or the diffusion model perspective? What is your secret sauce? Why is whatever you built going to be better than something? If you're just fine tuning, or if you're just, adding some UX or UI to kind of enhance my experience, how long are you going to live? And I think this is going to be the big theme. Theme one is going to be theme one is going to be uh, AI everywhere. And theme two is going to be from the thinking folks. It's going to be, are you kidding me? Like, so
Well,
yeah.
in the spirit of McLuhan's medium is the message, I think that is true with AI to a big extent. I think the big success with chat-based, generative AI was it made it accessible to human beings. They could input prompts and get results and they could play with it. But I think you're right. The real power is going to be behind the scenes, embedded in tech. That's also kind of scary because it means we as conventional consumers and users won't have the optics. We won't know what's going on. Do you worry about that?
There's a lot packed into that question. I don't think we're going to know anything about consumer AI at all until Apple launches iOS 18 at WWDC. When I think about its usefulness, ChatGPT was the fastest growing technology to 100 million users. That's cliche at this point, but it's not a sticky app for consumers. It has all kinds of business uses, and I use it every day, 20 hours a day. But most people don't who aren't in business. The number one consumer app is Character AI, which is a synthetic app that allows you to have fake Paris Hilton and fake Elon Musk, and you could pay him $10 a month, and you could have a chat room filled with like Isaac Newton and Stephen Hawking and Marie Curie, and you could talk physics. I mean, it's a synthetic interface, and they're sticky like to 2.5 hours a day.
We just got an endorsement from Donald Trump for media posts using Parrot AI. So yeah, there you go.
So when you look at the synthetic tools that are out there and what's capturing consumers, it becomes instantly obvious that they have no need for the kind of chat clients that we are using in business. However, my PII and my PHI is in my iPhone, all of it. I have my health data in Apple Health. I'm wearing an Apple Watch. I've got my financial data there because I use payment apps. And it's very safe because Tim Cook has made me a promise. He said, look, Apple is all about privacy. We have created this technology called Secure Enclave. If your phone is stolen or you forget your password, you're really in trouble because we can't even get to your data. That's the party line at Apple. Okay, if they're able to run a large language model in the iPhone, and I'm sure they can because Mistral 7B, the small open source models, even some of the large language models, the iPhone is an incredibly powerful computer, and it's got a lot of memory and it's got a lot of RAM available. So I have no doubt in my mind you'll be able to run, and they've also been optimizing the chips for probabilistic math. So I'm going to let my iPhone become my assistant, and Siri can't suck forever. They have to be revising this. So when they build a system where my private information is mine, and I have the value of an assistant, a true AI assistant, this is a big deal. And I don't think you or I can and they're slow playing it. Like they don't need to get it right in iOS 18. They could wait till 19 or 20 because no one can come close to them with respect to distribution. I mean, the richest people on earth are have to be. It's a $1,500 phone. So to have a $1,500 phone, you're gonna be in the top quintile of human beings on the internet. So they've got an unbelievably affluent audience. Unbelievably affluent audience who is ready, already trust them. And if they're able to create some AI tools where my private data stays private, I get the assistance that we really want. You and I are going to schedule a meeting for next week to follow up on this. Right now, the process. Someone's but if the phone anticipated that that's something I was going to do because it learned over the last 4 times we did this that I always call you and say, hey, thanks and whatever, or I send you a note, and it did it for me. Now we're talking a whole new level, right? This is a whole different way to interact. And I have said a million times, Joe, and you've heard me say it a million times, technology is meaningless unless it changes the way we behave. I don't think generative AI is a behavior changing technology for the average person. It's a huge business game changer. I hate that term too. Just it changes everything in business from a productivity perspective. But as a consumer, I haven't felt it yet. When Apple guys wake up in a couple of weeks, I think we're going to learn something that we just don't know right now.
I'll look forward to that review. It might be what finally changes me from an Android to an
It
iPhone.
might be. It very well may be. Although the Samsung phones can run this stuff too. It's
Yeah.
just a question of how far behind the curve they are with respect to, getting this done. They dabbled with Bixby. They tried to do an assistant. They never quite got that right. Uh, and I think, look, Android may incorporate something into their operating system. Google has Gemini. It is a super powerful model. So, but the funny thing about Google is they have the tech. They just haven't been able to package it. Like they can't get out of their own way from a packaging perspective, which is unfortunate because they invented this stuff for all intents and purposes.
Right. Well, they're not as focused as Apple is because they're operating in a lot of different directions. But, I'm still all in on them. But I am talking to you on a Mac computer, so I'm by on that regard.
Well,
Um, so, I want to leave you with the tough question I always ask about the secret sauce of what's coming next. But I want to set it up by saying I just did a quantitative analysis of keyword searching of phrases in the big agency holding company annual reports that they just released to see how many times they reference certain words, AI, artificial intelligence, not surprisingly off the charts. I
yeah.
will say, I asked the word ethics, not so good. Um, but I also asked for about things like, Web3 or blockchain or, metaverse. I mean, nothing, no references. What do you think will be the next curve into a new disruptive technology that the ad industry will get behind? Or is it going to be all AI all the time?
So I think the agency business is about to transform into the techno haves and techno have nots in a way that it has not ever in the past. In order to properly use AI for advertising, you need a lot of external signals and incorporated into the model's purview. You could do that a lot of different ways, but as you know, the vast majority of data is private and behind, encrypted and sitting behind firewalls. But then there's an insane amount of data that we would use to inform our decisions, and they come in the form of current events. What's happening in politics today, what's happening with the wars around the world, like the things that are impacting us every day, interest rate hike or whatever. And then there are the longer term trends. Kids aren't getting married as young as they used to. They're not having as many babies. And the climate is impacting the farmer, like the longer term cultural events, but not just cultural, literally trends. So those signals are not incorporated into large language models right now. They are in the macro sense that they've scraped the whole internet. So to the level that information is there, but it's not quantified and or in any way annotated properly for use in making a business decision. So there are very few companies large enough to process all of the signals they need to process. I mean, there are a few algo traders in the financial services world, but in the advertising world, you don't see big companies' marketing departments, the Fortune 500 marketing departments, being able in any way to gather the external signals, professionally annotate them with subject matter experts so that they are relevant, put them into vectors, weight the vectors, be able to actually tune a model to understand the outside world, then do the same thing with the proprietary data of the client or historical data about efficacy of efficacy of ads in the context of those external signals over time, so that those time series could then be used by a large language model uh, as they improve to really start to become valuable as a advertising tool. You sit down and you ideate, but you're ideating against a target audience looking for white space, like what a real marketer does in a Socratic debate with their marketing team. And the people that put that together are obviously going to be the big holding companies if they want to stay relevant. And the market for that will be big, gigantic advertisers because that's who needs it the most. And they're only going to be rarefied organizations that can make the investment to build out what this has to be. So is Omnicom going to do it? Of course they are. Will WPP? They're certainly going to try. These are like, this is what I think is going to happen now. I think the holding companies are going to go, if they want to stay relevant, and I know Omnicom's already made that commitment, and some of the others have said they have too, but they, when you look at the landscape, there's no other way for AI and the future to unfold, because the little executional productivity things, they're going to happen automatically. Like you'll super automate any little process, any point process that you need to automate, because you can. But when it comes to really driving productivity and efficacy and really getting competitive advantage, if you're going to use these tools and you're going to, if you're going to build a Death Star, then you need to build it. And I think the only people who could do that are the ad agencies. So I'm kind of bullish on the big holding companies in a way that wasn't, assuming, by the way, they can get out of their own ways. Like I said, I know that Omnicom is doing it, and I know I've seen inklings of it at other organizations as well. I'm just not as familiar with them as I am as the ones at Omnicom. But the to me, that I think that's the future. And if it isn't, then I don't know who else could do it. Like without the institutional knowledge that the agencies have, without the relationships with the clients and the trust that they have, the clients will never be able to be big enough to do it by themselves. It just requires too much information gathered and too much money spent. I don't think it would make sense.
Also, the clients don't have the objectivity that a big agency has looking across all the
100% right. Yeah, it's also true. Yeah. So, I mean, look, these are just speculations. This could all change. And by the way, what happens every morning, Joe, is every morning I wake up, I read a new white paper, and like we teach prompt engineering in our practice, right? And prompt crafting to our clients. So they announced that ChatGPT would have a memory function in February, but it hadn't happened. So if 3 days ago I was teaching you a prompt crafting workshop, I would have taught it to you one way. If I taught it to you today, we'd now be talking about persistent memory across chats and what stateful memory feels like, and a completely different way to think about how to interface with a chat client. And this is literally 2 days apart. So every morning I wake up, there's something brand new. It's so hard to speculate about the future. It's so hard to predict. Like now you just got to just keep reading and keep working and just stay in it every day, and just try to make the best of what is an amazing time in technology.